Hey y'all, it's your girl, Dr. Makeba, host of the Healthy Woman Podcast, a talk therapy platform curating healthy conversations so that women like you can serve God while also pursuing an optimal state of holistic health. Hey girl, welcome to the Healthy Woman Podcast. If this is your first time checking us out, welcome. You'll love it here. You are no longer a stranger. You are family. If you are an OG listener or the original listener that started with me either on socials or to somewhere, you know what I need you to do. I need for you to go ahead right now, share out this podcast episode to one girlfriend so that we can double our reach with a click of a share button. Remember, we don't need to share it out to 100 people. We just need for everybody to share it out to one person so that we can double our impact immediately. All right. Good. So today, I'm really excited about this podcast episode. As a Black woman in a professional space, I just turned 50. So I have a little bit of experience dealing with people and working with different people, working in the professional space. Even life experiences has kind of shaped and molded how I show up on a daily basis, how I view success, how I view the various nuances that make up the sum total of who I am. And so I thought, because of the fact that the Healthy Woman Podcast focuses in on physical health, mental health, emotional health, financial health, spiritual health, all of that, I thought it would be a really good conversation to have if we focused in on women's mental health after trauma and then talk about it from a lens of the professional Black woman. And so to do that, I have invited two of my very close girlfriends here in Chicago who are bosses in their own space, bosses in their own right. We have a businesswoman, boss babe, doing the thing, originally from Chicago. Everybody knows her. My husband actually calls her the mayor of Hyde Park because everywhere she goes, she's just waving at everybody and everybody knows her. So we have Laretta Lofton here. And then I have my other good girlfriend who is Doctor. My friend back home calls me Doctor. So we call her Dr. Nayshon Milford. And she is, I'm just going to let Nayshon tell you all the stuff that she do. But Nayshon is a business professional in higher education at Chicago State University. And I really believe that both of these women together, along with myself, will be able to offer some great insight into how to approach mental health, emotional health, trauma experiences, how you can kind of climb your way out of that, how to be cognizant of how you are approaching these things when you're in the workplace or even when you're just looking at success from your lens, right? Are you aware of why you act the way you act or why you do the things you do or why you're talking or why you're even going after that degree? Hint, hint, personal story. We'll talk about that in a minute. But, why? Why are you doing these things? Are you doing these things because you really feel a call to doing these things? Are you doing these things because there's some brokenness that's there that needs to be attended to, right? So we just want to talk about this and have some great conversations. So without further ado, help me welcome my two good girlfriends, Laretta Lofton.
Hey!
And Dr. Nayshon Milford.
Hey.
To the Healthy Woman Podcast. Let's get into this conversation, y'all. How y'all doing?
Good.
Yeah. Are you excited about being on that side today?
Yes, I am.
So so let's talk about this. Laretta is the host of Black Businesses Matter podcast. I actually download that podcast. I've listened to several episodes and she just, you have to know Laretta to love Laretta. And she's just such a ball of sunshine. It doesn't matter what she's talking about. It doesn't matter who she's talking to. It does not matter. She is a ball of sunshine. So Laretta is the host of the Black Businesses Matter podcast. If you have not heard it, go to all the
platforms.
All the
platforms.
Okay. And download.
Apple Tunes, Spotify, Google, you name it. I mean, you Google Black Businesses Matter podcast and it'll give you a bunch of platforms. I mean, most people use Apple Podcasts. I mean, it's okay. Yeah. It's okay. We still love you.
I wonder why.
I get it.
Be good, ladies. Be
It's
good.
okay. It's okay. But it's also on Spotify for those, who don't have Apple, right? And they can still get it. So we're okay with that too.
Okay. All right. Well, Laretta Lofton, thank you so much for being here, my sister.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited about this podcast.
I know. It's going to be really good. Like, we're going to talk about some really good stuff. And I want you all to be as transparent and open as you feel comfortable being. But I think anything that you bring to the conversation is going to be valuable.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
Help me welcome Dr. Nayshon.
Hey.
Hey, Dr. Nayshon.
Hey, super excited to be here.
Yay. Yes. So, all right. So we are going to jump right in to this. So, like I mentioned, we're talking about women's mental health after trauma. And I think it's pretty safe to say that every woman, to some degree, has gone through some form of trauma, right? So I want to talk about that, but I also want to talk about it through the lens and from a storytelling perspective from professional Black women, right? So this podcast, as we were talking earlier, this podcast is not exclusively for the Black woman, but what we do know is that we attract typically what we look like, right? True. And so I know that there are going to be a lot of Black women, women of color, if you will, who are going to connect to what we're talking about. And so I thought it would be a really great conversation to talk about this from the professional Black woman's perspective, kind of bring in some of your experiences, what you've gone through, what you have seen in the workplace, your own personal life's experiences, and just kind of let's talk about it and see what type of healing energy we can send the women who are looking at this today or whenever they look at it. All right. All right. So like I said, I want to jump right in and I want to ask this question. Does trauma motivate the need for success? So from your perspective, thinking about this, and I have a reason as to why I'm asking this question. I'll kind of chime in as you all are talking. But I was thinking to myself, when I look at Black women in particular, I notice a common denominator. After trauma, we ball out. Like we just go for everything. And we are at our best when we do that, whether it's after a divorce, whether it's after, whatever, death, whatever. At that moment, we gonna lose 50 pounds. We about to go get a degree. We about to do something. So my question is, does trauma motivate the need for success? What y'all think?
I think that's a great question. I think maybe it's a sense of maybe not success. Maybe it motivates something inside of you that you have delayed.
Okay.
I don't know. Something inside of you that says, I've been wanting to do this and I haven't. And then trauma makes it so real because trauma, I think sometimes may question your own mortality sometimes when it's death. It also questions your worth if it's divorce, And so I think that maybe it does. Because when you said it, I was like, oh my gosh, I know what you lose the weight. You go ball out, you go buy a car. Like it's so much that you do that I was kind of like, oh, that's some of me, So I do think that maybe it's not success, but I do challenge because I do say that it could be because I don't believe success is all like money and fame, that success is whatever you want. So I think
it depends on the definition of what
how
you say
see
success is.
Yeah.
That's great. Phenomenal question, right? Very thought-provoking because oftentimes we don't see ourselves like that. But when you really step back and reflect, it's like, like Larvetta said, it's see a little bit of
make you right. Right.
And then I also think that beyond the success piece, I think that trauma motivates. I think that's different ways that we heal. And so sometimes we heal by going to get and do and be and prove. We're trying to prove something within ourselves. And then it's proving we're healing, right? At least we think we're healing.
Right.
Sometimes we're just compounding things, right? We're pushing it further down. We're suppressing. But I think that, mentally we're distracted from the healing. Right. We think we're healing, but the doing and the being and the going and the getting, it's really a distraction.
Right.
And so you look up, you 40 years later and you're sitting in therapy and you're finally healing from all of this trauma that you've experienced over the course of your life.
That's really, I love the way that you said that. And so here's the thing. The reason why I asked that question, so I just...
Here's the thing.
Doctor. Because another doctor, you guys, just for the record.
Here's the reason why. I look at myself. So as you all were saying, you know, oh, wow, what she said, you kind of wonder if you see yourself in that question. So part of my story is after I got divorced, I immediately dove into school. For whatever reason, well, for me, it was, I was made to feel guilty when I was going after one degree. I was made to feel guilty that I wasn't giving my husband attention. And so I didn't go in after I finished my bachelor's degree, I didn't do anything else. So when I got divorced, I was like, ooh, I'm free. And I went in, right? Master's degree, doctorate degree, bam, straight up was done, right? I didn't deal with what was fueling doing that. And so I use school as my coping mechanism. So I'm like acutely aware of that now. I wasn't aware of that then, right? But then it also made sense why nothing I did ever satisfied me. Like I was in the middle of working on a doctorate degree and was coming home and crying every night, working because I just did not feel like I was being fulfilled. And so what happens is after I finished that degree, okay, I got the degree. What's next? Should I take some cooking classes? What should I do? And it was like, oh, this is what's happening. You're still being faced with the issue that was there before you started, that you never you never opted to get help for. And so and then the same thing with losing weight. I lost 50 pounds after I got divorced, like got serious so I feel sometimes, and I see this as a pattern. This is my perspective. This is what I see. Y'all can tell me what y'all see. But what I see is I see women, a lot of our African-American women, when you haven't succeeded in one area, or when you found yourself having failed at one area, whatever that is, you're going to attach yourself to something that you can control. And that narrative for me at that time was, if I can't count on nothing else, I can count on my mind. That ain't gonna fail me. I know I can succeed at school, right? So, and I look, like I'm an observer, and I look at different women, and I'm like, but you know their story. And it's like, I can see this, like I can write this for you. I know where you're going. So that's why I said that. That's why I brought that up, because I'm just wondering, is it something I see? Is it a real thing?
Yeah.
Do you see it?
Yeah. It is very
thought-provoking. I'm literally sitting here thinking about me like, dang, why am I doing, you know what I mean? And in my head, I'm a go-getter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like something new. I love new challenges. I love new experiences.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we're all, you know, obviously divorced.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm sitting here trying to think, like, what did I do after I got divorced? What did I? Well, I went to therapy, but you know,
which was great.
But I finally
That's what I did.
writing my book, and you know, so I started so I started doing new things to cope, to heal, to deal, to process. And so for me, this is really thought-provoking. Like, I'm gonna have to sleep with this tonight.
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
Yeah,
It definitely
it's definitely one to appreciate.
I think it's one to appreciate, and one to make you think, thought-provoking, like really become clear about it, because you know, of your why, and understanding, like, and I also think that, I mean, to Nayshon's point of, I went straight to therapy after divorce. I also realized that when I went to therapy, one of the things that the therapist said that really just hurt my feelings, and I must say hurt my feelings, but I get it. She says, no disrespect, nothing against your marriage, but right now we're here for you. And I kind of was like, huh? Like I just told you that my husband, you know,
right?
But she was like, "But we not here for, you know." And I was, you're right. And from that point, though, it kind of so when you're saying about like getting clear about your why, you're not here. He's not here with you. Like it's about you. So you're gonna have to share. You're gonna have to unload
your stuff.
This ain't, you can't be like, oh, I'm here because, we're going through a divorce, and he's not here, but you not. It was like, no, you didn't call here to say, you said y'all going through right. So to me, you here for you. And so though I think that that's what you said, is that it was in my face that I was offended. So I'm just trying to say I was offended. But do you
think, so good point.
I was offended.
Good point. Do you think that, so, well, let me ask it like this. What do you think is the reason why we as women might not dive into talking about our feelings or talking about ourselves? Because your therapist said, with all due respect, we're not here for that. We're here for this. But the default was always to talk about something else. Do you think that that plays a role in that?
So I speak for me. I think I'm just going to say this. I do a lot of third person.
Okay.
And so by doing third part keeps me out of it. So if I talk about it, I'm like, oh, they, right? So, but they is really me too. But I'm not saying that. So to your point, my area, and I do think it's mental health, is that I suffer from being able to be vulnerable in those spaces.
Okay.
And so it has to be very much sit with your emotions. Let's talk all the way through. Let's not go to default business. Oh, you can do this. And so I can go and kind of spin it.
Yeah.
Do a little spin and come back to business. But like, this is about you.
Familiarity.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so even though it's like, oh, you it's about you. But what I've realized over time, that ultimately it really isn't about me, because what is about me is about my feelings. I'm not calling to say, hey, I've never been the person, hey, I'm calling. Yeah. Hi. I want to share my feelings with you.
Yeah.
But I have people that do that. And I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But I don't think that for a lot of, and I'm going to say Black women, is that we've been given, and this is my word that I had to work through in therapy, is permission to have feelings.
Okay.
And having permission to say, I don't feel well, and I don't have to tell you why. I don't feel well.
Yeah.
Or I'm not in a good space, or, this isn't a good time for me. Period.
Okay.
And so I fought myself in areas like that, because you're just going, but this is over time. In reaching 50, like I literally was like, okay, sit with yourself. And so I do think when I sit here and I say, for Black women as go-getters, you just go. I got to keep it going. We got to get back to hustling, baby. I got to keep it moving. But what I have realized is sitting with your feelings is frightening. For me. Like I got you. Oh, so sit there and process this. And just like when I think about it, when she said to me, why did you get married? I didn't ask myself, why did you get married? And that was a real question, right? I should be able to answer that. But you know what my default was? I got married. It was time. It's time for me to have a baby. And he asked me.
Right.
And that did not answer the question.
Ma'am.
But I didn't know that as we were getting through it, that I think as Black women, we have our script. And I think it was my script. It was like, as I got older, I've accomplished this. It was time for me to get married. Like that was next on my list.
And then when it does, and then when that doesn't work out,
oh shoot,
we then find ourselves in what I was talking about earlier. Maybe. What do you think?
Maybe. And I think to your point, I think it's a valid, seriously, like as I think through that, I do. So when you didn't get that, you run to success. I do, because, and I say this, and I know we're speaking from a trauma of a failed marriage, but I realized that it forces you to doubt yourself, because there was like these checks, like I got this, I did this, I bought property, I got this, and then it's like, oh shoot, I failed. Like, and you.
So now I got to find something
to win it.
To win that again.
Yes,
that word,
that's good.
To win.
I think you right.
That's crazy that you mentioned it. And I don't want to flip it a little bit, but that word win it triggers something for me, because I almost about a year and a half ago, I was promoted, and God knows why.
Can we just say congratulations?
Thank you.
Okay, I mean,
congrats.
Come on, best star.
I mean, like she rolled it off her tongue.
It's like we just go
but you know what?
Okay.
So that's the thing too. Okay, two things in one. Okay. But that's
downplaying.
Downplaying.
Just roll
it off your tongue, right? And so I was promoted to be dean of students.
Now, dean,
Bless the Lord on my
doctor.
soul.
Yeah.
No, but in that, I ain't never been dean. Matter of fact, they created the position for me. So there was never a dean of student success. And so I'm grateful to God for the opportunity, but it's hard doing and being what you ain't never seen. And so I in there because they needed someone to do this work and to now shift some new work to and some new initiatives. But I'm somebody because I am a high achiever, and I'm somebody that if I touch it, I got it. If I know my stuff, I can kill it. Baby, I couldn't kill that. I was in there stressing and crying and praying. And every day my prayer on my way to work was, God, help me to think, speak, and act intelligently about your work today. Like, help me, Lord, because I can't do this. These people that gave me this job.
And that's because there was no framework.
There was no framework. There was I've never seen it done. And although I had been in higher ed at that point about 15, 16 years, I was more so in higher ed adjacent. And so I literally had never really worked in academic affairs or directly in student affairs. I worked with external programming. And so there was a lot of assumptions because now I'm this dean, I'm supposed to have this experience. And sis was struggling, y'all. I was on a struggle bus. I have a counterpart who serves as the dean of students who's really, really supportive, much younger guy, but just a down-to-earth brother, like a for real work brother that really supported me, kind of onboarded me. I had some strong individuals on my team, but I found myself feeling defeated quite often and realizing the longer hours I worked, or if I'm coming home and working, I'm not being any more successful. The work is still going to be there. There's still some stuff I don't know. I spent a year in that role, having not been professionally developed, like not being poured into, yet I'm giving of myself to develop my team members, but I wasn't finding myself with any wins. And so this year I committed to going to conferences, going to, just getting around other people, other deans at that level, doing the work so that I can learn from it. But I struggled. I came home, I cried. I told my husband, babe, I don't feel like I'm equipped for this. I think, I jumped too soon. Like I felt like all of last year, I felt so defeated. And it was because I could not see myself winning. I wasn't killing it. I'm used to, and it seems like every biweekly meeting with my provost, I walked away feeling more and more like I wasn't doing good enough. And that's important to me, right? Because since I was a little girl, I was A's and B's and everybody rewarded me and loved on me and patted me on the back and gave me quarters and dollars until, we took our prices up, right? But so that, since a kid, I've always been validated in that way. And now as a 40-something, almost 50-year-old woman, I'm not even able to validate myself because I don't have any wins to fall back on. And so that has really been a struggle for me. And so when we talk about success, I'm like, damn, am I successful?
Right.
Like, am I really finding myself? So I'm looking at my work differently now. And so I am like small wins, like, hey, I promoted 2 people. Hey, I was able to create new positions, so I'm looking at those small wins. So while the retention and the graduation rates may not look like what they want them to look like yet, these are small wins. I'm building something that was never built before. And so it's going to look different than what they expected to. So,
right. I love that. So I think 2 things about what you talked about. Number 1, this proverbial sense of success that society has created for us. I know you work in an environment that's going to create measurements for success, right? So there are measurements for success that you have to that you have to follow. But I mean because what I heard you say was you couldn't define success for yourself. It had nothing to do with the job, right? It was you couldn't figure out what success looked like for you. You couldn't figure out what wins you were achieving for yourself, right? And it goes back to Black women having this higher standard of whatever they've been taught over years, whatever people have made them feel like over years, whatever they may have adopted for themselves over the years, and having to meet. I remember when I was in therapy one time, my therapist said, I just don't feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be at this age. And she said, by whose standards? Right. She said, who said that you were supposed to be here by the age? I said, nobody, but it just is. Like, if you're not doing something of value, if you're not making your mark on the earth, if your footprint isn't solid, then you're not successful. You're not doing what she said, Makeba, that's you though.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt some kind of way about that because I'm like, yeah, I guess in a, you know, it could be just me, but let's be for real. That's also the world that we live in.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
I think it's like,
Agreed.
right?
I do. I think the world that we live in has created these, sometimes I call them, some of them are superficial successes, right?
Yeah.
Superficial.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of looking at success as really, I made a decision to work on my health.
Mm-hmm.
I made a decision to be kinder to my loved ones. Like that's success.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the part, the world didn't show us that.
Right.
They didn't show us that. And it's interesting because when we were talking and you were saying about, yep, you lose the weight. But the difference is, and this is what we've learned, is why don't you get the mindset on your relationship with food?
Mm-hmm.
Not lose the
end
weight.
result.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you can do that.
Right.
But what's the root?
What's the root?
Right.
You can win
What's
at
gonna
that.
happen?
Right.
Yeah.
You can win. And when you said that, it was like, yep, we can win. And so I remember, I don't know if it was, I don't know, but I remember it was a trainer said, and this was years ago, and I lived in New York. And to your point, I was, on this journey, and he was a European trainer. He said, Americans, he was very specific. He said, Americans, we get caught in this idea of, he would say, we can't wait to go to lunch. Oh, let's go to that new restaurant. Like it's that. So then what he then said was, oh, I just lost 150 pounds versus I just chose not to eat the steak that actually was the steak that caused my mother to pass. And I have learned to give that
that's
up.
not a win.
And that's
in our eyes.
Yeah.
Like I get what you're saying. Because in our eyes, the win is I lost 100 pounds.
It's the number.
It's
right.
the number. And he said, and that's why he said in America, we said we're the most unhealthy, saddest, depressed country. He said, when you come over there, we're because we've made a decision that we left work at 4:00. And guess where we're going? To take a walk. I was like, he was like, yeah, we leave at 4:00. It's a wrap. We're done. And that's a win. Right. I was like, that doesn't sound real winning. And that was years and years ago. But I've realized as I've gotten older in this 50 life, it's that.
Yeah.
And so I think when you said it is that success. We live in America. We live in this capitalist world that the win is based on the numbers.
It's the hamster wheel.
Yes.
We're constantly spinning our wheels, finding more and looking for. And then now when you think about all the things at our fingertips, the conversation we having now, watch we start getting ads for stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's literally like society and the things that are being placed in front of us are like, oh, our eyes get bigger and bigger and bigger, based upon what's in front of us. And there's always something new in front of us. There's always a new challenge.
Yeah.
There's always something, you know what I mean? There's fitness challenge, weight loss
which
challenge.
contributes to why we're never satisfied.
Never satisfied.
Oversatiated.
Yeah.
Our senses are always needing to be satisfied.
Yeah. Yep.
Always need to be satisfied.
Always looking
we're
for the next.
Never satisfied, which goes against the life that God has given us to live. Like you're not, how are you constantly trying to pursue? And this goes back to what I was talking about before. Like, what does it profit a man to, right? What is it to gain the world and lose his soul, right? So I would extend that to say, well, what does it profit a man to go after everything that he wants to go after, but never really focus on his soul, his spirit, getting therapy, helping yourself so that you can evolve and go from this glory to glory lifestyle. Yeah, it's something to think about. So real quick, I want to shift a little bit. Nayshon. So we were having a conversation.
Oh, let me sit up straight. She called me by name, Lord.
I can't. So we were having a conversation.
That's the educator in her.
It is. I said the name. I was like, so Nayshon. My students in class were like, she said my whole name.
Baby.
So Nayshon, I remember we were having a conversation. We were talking about trauma in the workplace. So I'm going to talk to you because we were just talking about the workplace, and you're in a high leadership position in the higher ed space. And You had mentioned something about trauma, about women bringing trauma into the workplace, but not being aware that this is how they're functioning, or this is the basis of why they're functioning the way that they're functioning. So I just want to know, what has been your experience with mental health effects on trauma, whether it's personal, whether it's something you've observed, whether it's something that you have kind of honed in through lectures or different things like that. Like, what has been your experience with that, and how has it affected you?
Yeah. So for me, I talked about being in higher ed for now it's about 17 years, and it's been more so adjacent to higher ed, not directly. And so the first maybe 14, 15 years of my career, I did not work directly with university students. I worked with pre-college programs. And I was under some leadership, Black women leadership, that, I felt like did not necessarily pour into me and support me. And because of my personal, relationships with women sometime, or the inability to be able to trust, and, not even just in female relationships, with just trust issues in general, right? Not seeing or not receiving from these women what I thought I should have been receiving from my leadership, from being poured into, from we were all around the same age. So then you got some other stuff there too, because you start feeling like, they think you want their job, and I promise you I don't.
Right.
I got it now and I don't,
Right.
But I think for me, it was more so I began to pull away, like, okay, can't trust them, right? So it's like backing into this glass wall, because you start feeling like, okay, I cannot trust. But then you also begin to respond and think and feel and hear things that may or may not be said, or, you just begin to kind of go into yourself. And then you also begin to go into yourself. You begin thinking more like, why me? Why am I not good enough? Why do they think this way about me? Why do they say, you know what I mean? Why are they, over there running there talking about me, And so you begin to like go into yourself in a way that you almost are kind of protecting yourself. And when you've experienced other traumas in your life from childhood up, where you've had to protect yourself, that's an innate response, right? Oh, the minute you feel any form of trauma or any trigger or any reminder, it's like, get over here, right? Yeah. And so I think for me, and having witnessed other women with trust issues that, don't feel like they've been supported by other Black women or other women in general in the workplace, we began to respond in a way that's like, I can't trust you. I'm not going to say it, but I'm going to look at you sideways. I'm going to half trust you, half speak to you. So, trying to break those walls down, especially as an administrator for women that are maybe older than you, or that's difficult, because I got to lead you and I need you to be able to trust that I truly have your best interests at heart. Yeah. I truly want to lead you. I truly want to propel you and get you to your best stuff, because guess who's not going to be here forever. Right. And I believe in succession planning. And so that's the lens I operate from, but I also recognize that everybody don't operate from that space. Right. And so I was recently, back in the fall, I was at a Women in Leadership in Higher Education conference at Harvard, and sitting around these other women in the room, measuring my mental success, like, damn, these some boss women up in here. Like, I got to go to another conference. I got to go do this and get there so I can get to their level of experience and being able to articulate this work in the way that they articulate it. And so I'm in this room measuring myself up. But one of the panels that took place was around something around like, who supported you, or who are your advocates in the workplace, right? And many of the women in that room talked about men. Talked about men bringing them up and encouraging them and supporting them. And so I want to challenge us as Black women that when you have the opportunity, when you're in a position to, in our language, love on another woman in a workplace, right? Bring her up in a workplace, mentor her, like really do that. Look for ways that she might feel deficient, or if there's an opportunity in, performance evaluations, talk about personal and professional goals, right? Like, sis, I'm not just here to help you get these numbers that we need, right? Yeah. But like, where you want to go? Like, you want a master's degree? Like, we pay for that here, right? Yeah. Like, really try to talk to them on a personal level to help them see, one, I'm for you, sis. I'm rooting for you. I'm rooting for you. But also get them to break down their walls and to be trusting and to understanding, to know that we in this together and I'm supporting you. I think that's something that we can do, to better support Black women in the workplace that are dealing in trauma?
I think so there's this notion that could be a true notion, depending on where you've been.
Mm-hmm.
Working for Black women is difficult, especially if you're a Black woman. I've experienced it. I've even observed it. I've seen it in different spaces. I've worked in the educational space. I've worked in the nonprofit space. I now work in the government space. And I think I've seen it in all of those spaces to some degree. I remember when I was a teacher and I was working on my master's degree, and I was looking to get into the principal program. I got accepted into the county principal program for development. And you need to go through this program in order to become an administrator. I think I reached out to probably 5 or 6 African-American women in leadership in that district and asked if they would be considered being my mentor, and not one of them responded. I mean, not even say no. They just didn't respond.
Yeah.
Right?
All of them?
Not one of them.
Wow.
Not one of them. And it was telling to me because I had always sought out mentors, not even in my professional space. I had been seeking out mentors in a personal space.
Yeah.
Because I'm an only child. I don't have, I always don't have sisters.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always looked for people who can just help develop me, speak to me, build a relationship with me.
Yeah.
I'm really big on relationships.
Tell me woman slip showing.
Right. Tell me that was slip showing.
Yeah.
Tell me that I got lipstick on my teeth.
Yeah.
Right, something.
Yeah.
Let me know that that's not a good look for you, sis. Something. So I try to become that person for somebody else, even though I never had that. But for the life of me, even at 50, I do not understand why it is such a tug and a pull to build professional relationships amongst Black women. And this isn't something to bash Black women. I genuinely want to know. I would love to figure out how we can push that narrative to make it a little bit more positive.
So I will say this. I think it's an interesting, dynamic, because there was 2 things that challenged me to fight for that. One is, I've worked for myself most of my career, right? But when I worked for an agency, I was bullied, and I was bullied by the Black women in the agency. I didn't know it was bullying till later. So bullying as in, this was the undercut. Oh, you're so young. You don't have any kids. You're not married. Oh, you can stay here till 10 o'clock. Didn't know that was bullying. I thought that was how you won, right? You stayed till 9 o'clock. You stay late. You come in
pay
early.
Your dues.
You pay your dues.
Yeah.
And so I didn't understand that. So I'm actually being penalized because I'm not married, because I don't have a husband. You can do this. When I know my mother got married at 22, I know plenty of people that got married at 18. So what does that mean? Because I'm coming in young, that means that I'm supposed to be here to 9 o'clock, which means that what that told me was that created a vision for me to win. So then marriage, kids were not at
because
the
I don't have that. I should be doing this.
So that's it. So, discovering that, right? So that was later. The other thing that I took a test that I realized was the people who had sent us business were men. So when you brought that up, I was like, interesting. Wasn't women. So what I made a decision was, maybe about 5 years ago, if something don't even apply to me, I just share it. I just I'm gonna send it to 10 people. If maybe 10, I don't know. Maybe they'll get it. Maybe. And in my mind, I don't know. This don't apply to me, but I'm gonna share it with 10 people, and maybe they'll jump on it or find some value in it. Right.
Yeah.
Because the reality of it all is you're stopping something that should flow. And so it wasn't until just recently, one of my very good friends, my peer, who got in a leadership role and brought us to the table. But I really I don't know if it's me, but I feel like peer to peer, you see a better success. I don't know. But I felt like if they're older than you, boo, you got to work
further
along than you. Yeah. It's kind of like, oh, you got 15, boo, I got 30. So you ain't there. What does that have to do with anything? So because of that, I began to say that as I build my team, you going home at 5. If you don't have no kids,
Mm-hmm.
you're not working till 7.
Absolutely.
I'm not creating that atmosphere.
Absolutely.
I'm not like, oh, you ain't got no business because you no.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
made that decision because even though that was my experience and I'm grateful for it, that doesn't mean it has to be your experience but the joke is, with the young folks that work for me, they say all the time, but we don't want no kids. I was like, it ain't gonna be on my watch.
Right. Not gonna be because I said
Because I said
You ain't gonna be in here working.
Right.
You ain't here working to be like, well, the reason why I had no kids because I was always working. No, y'all made that choice and that's fine.
Right.
But I realized that what I've learned that we have to flip is that when you said that, and I can be honest, there was a period in my life that I actually was angry. And with that very thing, like we were not helping. Like I would go into a meeting. I remember I went into a meeting to pitch, and y'all, I thought I was like, you done pulled yourself together. Then you see your sister, you like, what's up, girl? Hey, girl, they looked at me. Well, we start, and like we're not late, but it was like, oh well, you should have had the tech. I was like, well, actually, we were here 30. Like it was like everything we did, you was coming for me, and I was like, but the sad part about it that really hurt my heart was that I had 2 interns and I just wanted to ask them, I said, how did you feel? They said, I did not feel like I was a valuable Black girl. They saw that. Y'all sitting here and this is what y'all show for them? Like it was so, but because this is what I deal with, it was nice to let them see we're not talking about that part. And so I do think that it's our responsibility now because I was angry probably for a good 4 or 5 years. Real talk. Like every time a woman I be like, I ain't going to that because I know they gonna try to haze me.
Well, it's one of the reasons why I got out of education. It's one of the reasons why I got out of, aside from the fact that I moved to Chicago and was adamantly convinced I was not teaching in Chicago in the school system. But I got out of education because I was like, there's no support here. There's no support in this
bullying,
field.
it's all of that.
In this field.
They'll give you the more you show you can do, the more they'll put on your plate. And with less training, less development, it's like, you got it figured out. You got a degree. You got 3 of them. Figure it out, boo-boo. You brought up the the peer-to-peer relationship. And I can definitely honestly say, I have a group of girlfriends. It's 5 of us. We call ourselves the Faves, friends and virtual sisters. And we developed this organic relationship.
First of all, Sean is really good at acronyms.
She's
so good. Is this mic on? She's
send me your business. I will help
so
you.
good with acronyms. Like who would have thought Faves?
I was like,
oh my God.
She said something about somebody else. We started this and we call ourselves this. I was like, okay.
We work together.
We
don't all work at the same institutions, but we all worked with these federal grants together. So we're all at conferences. We're all from the state.
I love it.
And it just has been an organic, beautiful relationship. We're like directors or executive directors or whatever, of our jobs, higher ed, nonprofit organizations, but we support each other. I was like, a couple of us ran our state back to back, one person, then me, then the next, and so we were very supportive. Like, I'm gonna serve on your committee, sis, because, whatever. And so we even saw the need, like, we got to train up some more women. Like, we need to be able to pour into these other women, even if we didn't get it. We got to give what we wished we had. And that's how I try to be in the workforce, right? I try to, even if I'm not getting it, I'm going to pour into what I know you need, so that when you get to this seat, you can do the same thing for somebody else. And so, and I think for me, it might be generational, it might be people are older, they've spent so many years in these careers, and I'm thinking like, but I'm over here, I'm knocking on 50, but professionally in this space, I've been in higher ed, I've been in social service, I've been in behavioral health. You know what I mean? Like I got 25 plus years of work experience, but I'm a babe over here and I need a little bit more. And so, I think I want to be able to pour into young women what I wished I was given, even though I may not be getting it. I'm going to give what I wished I had, I know they're going to need, so that when they get in this seat, you got it.
I think that's what awareness is, right? I think that in every position, every position that I've been in where I've had a boss, and to this day I still have a boss. Like, I'm not the boss. I have a boss. But in every position that I've been in, I pull from that and I say, this is applicable or this is not applicable.
Yeah.
Like I know I want to lead, or I know what I don't want to do when I lead.
Mhm.
So I always try to leave those situations having learned something and not leave them bitter. Like this was a
Absolutely.
complete waste of my time.
Absolutely.
No, it wasn't really a waste of your time. You actually learned what to apply to the next situation or what not to apply to the next situation. Larvetta.
Mhm.
So nice segue here.
Okay.
So you were talking about
Mm.
not having had a family,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
One of the things that you and I both have in common, and one of the things that I think kind of connected us in a way that we may not have been aware of,
Mhm.
but we are
Mhm.
connected, is we have a similar story about motherhood or the lack thereof, right? We are divorced. We've been married before, but never been able to have children. And I want to talk to you about how this has affected you, if it has affected you in any way as you approach success. And then I'll kind of give my 2 cents on what it did for me. But I want to hear your story. Like how did that, if it did, affect you in any way as you look at success or your life moving forward?
So I will say this, it did mentally, and I didn't know that it did. And I'll tell you something. I worked on a campaign actually for McDonald's, and it was around, we were coming up with a campaign to address this idea of, mothers, being single, but mothers didn't want to be called single mothers. We had done all this research, they were working mothers. They didn't want to be considered. They still had fathers that were present, but they didn't want that. So as I was digging into this, and sitting around, there was parts of me that I felt like no one was really hearing me because they were just kind of like, but you're not a mother, right? And I felt like I wasn't, at that point, I felt like I wasn't being seen. Because while you're doing this work, oh, this is amazing, I love it, they're still looking at me. Let me say this, at the time I didn't know that they were, but as I had to grow, is they were seeing me as, she don't really know this. I mean, she ain't got no kids, right? And so I started to start to feel a certain kind of way. So then I started to realize that all of the messaging that we were saying was all around mothers. So I kind of was like, well, what about me? And so there was a tough time in my life where I, was defeated. I was depleted, everything. I lost everything. And I could not get any help because I didn't have the story that she is at home with a daughter or a son and she can't pay bills. They didn't give me any help. They saw me as, what's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you? Yeah. You ain't got
And
nothing.
so,
you ain't no responsibility. You ain't got nothing. You should be able to pick yourself up.
And so I'm writing to nonprofits to get help. Nothing. Not one resource. And so, believe it or not, I wrote to our pastor. And I said, what happened to the successful Black woman who is grounded in her faith and she hit hard times? Who helps her? And no one could, nobody, not one person could ever respond to that. And I said, that's how it feels for me. And so if you talk to some people who have kids, they kind of was like, girl, ain't got no real problems. They like minimize everything, right? And so I just kind of was like, so during those tough times, I couldn't get help. I couldn't get a church to help me. Like not one person could see value in me to say that this girl, she might need a little help, right? I can't get my mortgage paid. I can't get no help. So that was traumatic for me.
Yeah.
And so knowing that and realizing that you put this persona in front of me that said, well, she should. I mean, I see if she had a kid. I remember people lightweight saying that. You didn't realize it. And so I remember that. And so I started to realize like, well, then maybe I should be having a kid. Like, then I started to say this. So then when you fast forward in life and
which is going to up the quotient, the value quotient.
Right. And then
you feel like if you have a kid, that'll up the value quotient for me.
That would up the value. And I will never forget I was dating a guy, went to visit his, friends, family member. I don't know what it was. And so I walked into the room and immediately, I don't know how the discussion happened, but all of them were mothers and all of them were wives. And as soon as someone said, "Oh, you don't have any kids?" I said, "No." What? Like, it was like, and I just shrunk. Like, I literally I just shriveled up. And I just was like, I don't like how I feel. So as I was sitting there, I didn't talk. I just was like, I just wanted to leave because at that very moment, I had no value to this. I had no value to these people here. They all have kids. They're married. They got these houses. You know what I mean? They live. And I'm over here like, I got a business, like, and so that started to really impact me. And in that relationship, that's when I had no worth, no self-worth. And that's when I had to realize that I had zero self. And then dating someone that had kids I had never experienced, I then was like, starting to feel like, well, maybe I should have a kid. Like, I remember those moments and feeling like, and probably knowing that I would go into rooms and feeling a certain kind of way that there was no value. And so knowing that, it's not like I woke up and said, I have people, I don't want no kids. I've never said that. Never came out of my mouth like I did not want kids. But for whatever reason, God didn't design it. And I had to live with that. But I never felt safe to be okay with that because the way that the world was, they didn't see me. I mean, people don't even realize that they do this. Oh, you don't have any, what?
They don't.
And it's so like, it's almost like, what? You don't have no car? Like, okay, that's not a bad thing. Like, what happened with that? So it's like, people are not able to respond, and it's very frightening. And I don't know that I got over it until after I had a miscarriage. When I had that miscarriage, that I had to decide, like, you have this child, right? The child didn't, maybe God, this isn't in his plan. Like, if this was in his plan, this would have gone through. And then did you want to be a single mama? Is that what you really want? Because you had this baby. You want to just, so now what? So you got to accept the fact that God said no.
Right.
Period.
Right.
No. Yeah. And so that was hard. And knowing that miscarriage, I think while I remember my mom she says, don't let the miscarriage be the depression of you. Because it could also be the blessing for you. Because for a minute, I wanted to, like, I'm supposed to be depressed because I don't have this kid. But realizing that, once again, did you want the kid or did you want the family? Like, deciding, because you can have the family. It may not look like, well, can I come out of here? May not, but you can still have that. And so I think that was the work.
What was the motive behind?
Yeah, behind it. And so I will say that it took a while, probably not till I was in my late 40s, to be able to be comfortable with being around, and I'm going to be honest, being around people with kids. Because I felt like I couldn't add value to the conversation. Oh, okay. I don't know nothing about, because no one had that. So we talk about inclusivity. I didn't feel included in the conversation because I was not the person. It was kind of like, even and I think about people depressed, who, go through divorce. I'm always like, that's not my area. When they start talking about their kids and, how they had to co-parent, that's not. And I've decided to say, that's not, I'm not going to insert myself, because what I don't want is someone to say, girl, you don't know because you ain't got no kids.
Right.
But one of the things my girlfriend said is, she's helped me to say, because you don't have a kid doesn't mean that you're not aware of co-parenting. Right. Right. And she constantly reminds me of that, because that is something I've told myself. I've told myself. So like, sometimes I'll be like, well, I know, I'm not a parent. She was like, once again, we've talked about this. I just did it this morning. It's funny. I was like, well, I'm not a parent, so I don't know what you're going through. With the minute she says, but you are aware of co-parenting. So you understand that.
But this is also this. I'm going to add value to what you just said. This is also how society has made us feel, because people have also said that single people should not comment on married stuff. That's not true, because married people are just two people that's coming together.
True.
So you're trying to tell me that because I am not married at the time, I'm not married, I can't comment on something that you may be contributing to your marriage that if you change it a little bit might help.
That's true.
But it's the same thing.
You
don't have kids, so you can't contribute to this kid conversation. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true. Right.
And you're right, because she reminds me all the time. She was like, you've helped co-parent my daughter. Mm-hmm. You've picked her up, dropped her off. You talk to her, you text her, you this. To me, you part of my village. You my co-parent.
People on the outside are more objective.
Yeah.
Right. Than true. People who are inside or who have been in something like that. Yeah. So I want to say thank you for sharing. Mm-hmm. I like when you said value. Mm-hmm. Because I literally put right here, personally, I've struggled with value going through my journey. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. I because I was not able to do what God put women on earth to do.
I know
that for me, for the longest time, y'all, I could not locate value anywhere. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So here came school. Mm-hmm. Here came businesses. Mm-hmm. I had about 10 businesses over the last 20 years. Trying to find valuable success, right? Mm-hmm. I'm very open and transparent about it now because God has completely helped me to see where my value does lie. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I've made social media posts before that said, I didn't pursue a doctorate degree because it was needed. Mm-hmm. I didn't need that degree for career. Mm-hmm. I didn't need that degree. Mm-hmm. I got that degree because I was trying to create a valuable narrative. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And I knew that was going to bring me value. Mm-hmm. I've since learned that the letters don't bring you value. You bring value to the letters. Yeah. But I didn't know that then. Mm-hmm. And so I've always said that I didn't need a degree. I needed to be healed. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
So, but a lot of that came out of living many, many years. I got divorced because one of the reasons I got divorced is because I couldn't have children. Mm. I couldn't have children, right? And so my ex-husband was just whatever, with whomever, right? Thank God protected me enough to not let him have children outside of the marriage. Thank God, right? But so I wanted to talk about that because I believe that there are numerous women out here who are dealing with that. Like, what do you do when the Bible speaks about the joy that children bring their parents? When the Bible speaks about how children are parents' joy. But then what do you do when women that God has created can't do that?
And it
took time to figure that out. I mean, of course, now it's a lot. I'm not going to lie and say I'm better. I struggle with that all the time. I struggle with this all the time.
Yeah.
But I'm mature and I'm wiser when it comes to making sense of it all.
Yeah. And I will tell you that it's present because, and I can say this, it's very fresh, losing my mom, and I was going through affairs, right? So my mom lined up for stuff for my niece, and it's okay, right? Mm-hmm. But there's nothing on my side. Mm. So when you're sitting there, it takes a minute, and so you have that moment, you set aside and that's beautiful. But on my side, I have no grandchildren.
Right. It stops with you. Yeah. It stops with you.
So then you had the dog and your dog left you. So then you're just like, I was just me over here. So it really does. So when you said that, it's still that moment. And as soon as somebody says it and there's like, oh, so there's no kids in here. And I was like, my brother has a kid, right? I don't, So then you, once again, you take that breath.
Trying to figure out where,
right?
Where do I fit in here?
And so it definitely, it's still. So when you said it still affects me. It still even little girls will say, "Oh, you not a mama?" They don't mean no harm.
Right. They don't mean no harm. Yeah.
But it does still bother you. Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, that little girl just said I ain't got no mama. And I'm just like, so it feels like, so one of my friends said that she feels like she was an orphan, right? And because she lost both her parents. And I was like, I can see that. I said, but so I'm gonna tell you this. It almost feels like because I don't have no kids, that I feel like that. So I see that there's ways in there because you're not leaving something to somebody to follow into your legacy.
Girl, that has been a thing too. Like I would find myself saying to people all the time, like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be out here doing because I ain't got nobody to leave it to.
Yeah.
I'm leaving it to.
Yeah, that's a real thing.
And I'm not like an Oprah who can leave it to children in Africa, right? I'm like,
yeah, I agree.
Really, I don't even have a legacy, right?
I agree. It's
so
a mental thing.
I'm telling you, it is a for real.
It is a real, and I don't know those that do it. And I'm grateful to the kids, to the friends that I have that are mothers who force inclusivity. Like, girl, call my son and my daughter. They need somebody to talk to. You go pick them up. And so they help me in that space to say that you the auntie.
Yeah.
And so when they say the rich auntie, I tell them I like being the rich auntie.
I told Clyde that the other day. I was like, we could be the rich auntie.
We could be the rich auntie. And rich means that you rich with life and abundance,
Yeah.
And so understanding that, but I really say that there is a constant struggle. And I'll say this because my mother said to me, I can't wait for you to be a mother.
A mother. Yeah.
And that never happened. So it definitely still rings in my ear, that and she said, you're going to be such an amazing mother because you were a great daughter. So you realize, and so you're not. So it's still like, it's still like a hole there.
Yeah.
That it's still a healing process.
Well, we know that. So Nayshon, I don't want to not add you to this conversation because that isn't your story, but you always have great stuff to add.
Yes. So and making people feel inclusive.
She does. So
I struggled with that one. I was like, that's not my story.
Yeah.
But I will say, when you said, did I want to be a single parent? I said, no, you don't.
I heard you. Yeah.
And then I caught myself like, maybe she did though. Like, if that's what the cost was, maybe she did. But for me, you talked about women not wanting to really identify as a single parent because they had an active father. They may not have been together. Like my daughter's father and I split up when she was 4 months old. We were never married. And I predominantly raised her with the village when she was 6 months old, or even prior to that when we were split. I was like, okay, Lord, I know you didn't call me to be a single parent, so I need you to give me a family to raise her. And, my oldest brother is deceased, my father was deceased, my mom was, ill. And so I didn't grow up in the church. We were like the Christmas, Easter, Mother's Day kids, going to somebody's church.
Right.
But I didn't grow up in the church per se. As a teenager, I adopted my own relationship with Christ in church, and in college I did. But God gave me my church. And I've been a member there ever since my daughter was 6 months old. And he literally gave me exactly what I asked for. He gave me a village to help raise her. So I never was a single parent. And so I did, struggle often and was able to go to my church for different things. And not necessarily because I was a single parent, but I had gotten a village. And so I felt bad because the kids, would be like, you coming to the family? Baby, I ain't your real auntie. No, we're not going to be at the family reunion. Like, they didn't know any better.
Right.
But, it was a struggle workplace-wise because, I'm working in this space where we got to take these kids on these college tours and I got to find a babysitter for a week. Or I got to be off work by a certain time to pick my kid up by 6 o'clock because the daycare closed. Or, you know what I mean? So there were some struggles there that when I speak to young women or I see young women, if I can help them make different choices in life or choices that will kind of help them kind of get to a certain place in life where they can be comfortable and they can really provide for their child the lifestyle that they deserve and their child deserves, then I try to have those very transparent conversations with them because it was a struggle. I'll tell you that much. I can tell you that I considered suicide when my daughter was maybe not even 2 years old because I did not. And it literally took God telling me, call so-and-so, which was my daughter's godmother. because I literally was trying to drive my car into a median, getting on the damn Ryan at 59th Street. It was raining, and I was just like, and it was the smallest thing that tipped it for me. I had just dropped her off at the home daycare she was at. I'm running to work on the north side, and the lady from the daycare called me and was like, "Can I talk to you this evening when you pick her up?" And at the time, I was working a job. I was a supervisor running group homes. So I'm working 4 to midnight or 2 to 10 or whatever. And if the boys act up, then I got to stay till 1, 2 till the police come or whatever. And she had a home daycare. So I'm thinking, this lady can tell me she can't keep my baby. But I need somebody to keep my baby because I got to go to work, because I got to pay the rent, because I got to pay the childcare, because I got to, and so it was like a domino effect. So if one thing was out of alignment or out of sync, then everything else fell. And so emotionally, and my mother was sick. My mother was just had another brain surgery, and her health was declining. I'm trying to manage her finances. I'm trying to manage my own. And so for me, it's the little triggers that would have tipped it over for me. And so for me, I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And went to try to drive my car, and God swerved that car straight and made me pick up the phone. And so it's like little stressors. Like if you don't have a strong support, if you don't have family, the village, friends that pull you in, you know what I mean? If you don't have that, like it could be a tough